Okay, hi guys. I said I would do a video on the Diablos and Musica. That is Latin for the devil in music. And funny enough, it doesn't mean my name, but doesn't mean I LOL. But before I say that and go into that video, let me just correct one mistake I made in the last one. I just showed my college credentials and I said I was on the Dean's List 2 semesters because it looked like that on the paper because the second one was rubbed off. I remember though I was on the Dean's List 3 semesters. The first two of the freshman year, which are pass-fail, so there's no Dean's List. The last year I didn't go. That's 2. So of the 4 semesters I actually had grades. I made the Dean's List 3 times, and not the 4th time. Not all 4, but 3. But 3, there were 3, but the 3rd one was completely rubbed out, so I made that wrong. I actually was on these 3 semesters. But anyway, whatever. I wish I didn't have to say all that. Okay, the devil in music. Okay, let's just think about this for a second. It's a Latin term. Well, no, the devil in music is an English term, but Diablos in Musica. I think that's Latin. Like I said, I don't plan these things. The devil in music is the most dissonant interval in 3 ways, with maybe one exception on one of the 3 ways, but basically in 3 ways it's the most dissonant interval. First, let's see what let's see what the 3 ways are. There's playing a single line of notes, and that would be a melodic interval as the most dissonant interval. There's notes in a chord, so it could be a harmonic interval, or it could be the root notes of a chord progression, what the chord progression root progression is, and that being the interval we're speaking of. So in those 3 ways, the devil in music is the most dissonant interval, with a possible exception of harmony, but let's just assume right now it's the most dissonant interval all the way across the board. First of all, let's talk about what the interval is. The devil in music is the diminished fifth or tritone. A tone is 2 half steps. Tri means 3, so a tritone would be 3 tones, and since a tone is 2 half steps, a tritone would be 6 half steps. Since there's 12 half steps in an octave, the tritone would divide the octave perfectly in half into 6 half steps. So it's this interval here from maybe E to B flat, and back to E, B flat, E. Okay, and it's the interval here. Notable that on either side is perfect intervals. Perfect fourth, and then perfect fifth, and then in between, devil in music. Okay, and it's 3 tones. It's tritone because it's 6 half steps, which is 3 whole tones. All right. Let me think where I want to go with this. First, let me state that the reason why I laugh about it being having to do with me is my birthday is 12/6/1966 or 12/666, which is not only the number of the Antichrist according to Revelation 13:18, but it's also 6 is the number of half steps in devil in music. So there's a lot of 6s and devils and weird intervals and stuff going on in all this mess, including my birthday. But also Steve Ives was born 6/6/60, that's 666. Paul Gilbert was born 11/6/66, that's 666. And Randy Rose was born 12/6/56, 10 years before me to the day. Okay, now about the interval, the devil in music. If you make a clock that's chromatic scale, 0 at the top, could be C and all the way around, or you make a circle of fifths with C at the center and circle of fifths all the way around. In either of those 2 cases, the diminished fifth is a diagonal, complete opposite notes, either on the chromatic scale or on the circle of fifths. It's this. So in other words, just like the devil in music divides the chromatic scale into half, 2 equal parts, 6 and 6 make 12, and 12 half steps in an octave. Also, the devil in the tritone divides the circle of fifths in half. So if you have C at the top, the opposite would be F sharp or G flat, which is either one of those 2 things are a tritone away from C. Now let's get into application. First, let me play more of that interval, so you just hear the sound of it. I haven't been doing much playing. Let's hear that. Let's do it melodically first. That's the first thing I mentioned. So melodic interval I'm going to say the the double music is the most dissonant melodic interval. Let me play some intervals and see if I can prove that. Okay. Double music. Ah, more resolution, like Maria. But now when I go to that was going to from the diminished fifth to the fifth. And the fifth is consonant. The diminished fifth, well, in this case would be sharp 4 technically, or augmented fourth, goes right into the consonants of the perfect fifth. Okay, or I could go the other direction. That way the perfect fourth is kind of consonant, but the diminished fifth that leads into the perfect fourth is dissonant. And I'll just play some melodies that have that. Yeah, it's a very dissonant interval. Like Van Halen when the beginnings of their songs. It's on Van Halen 2. I have to remember which one it is. Light Up the Sky. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so before I okay, so first let me discuss the theory of the tritone in modal theory. Actually, a Lydian mode has an augmented fourth, which is also a tritone, but it's a bright in this case because it's a sharp, and it's the sharpest mode. So in Lydian, that would be E Lydian, and the A sharp is the augmented fourth or tritone from the in the key of E Lydian. It's actually a bright note in that context, even though the interval itself is dissonant. It's flanked in such a, it's surrounded by notes in such a way that it's actually beautiful. Take Steve Vai, Satriani, everybody knows that. You too. Now the negative harmony or melodic inversion of Lydian is Locrian, which you predictably also has. It's the melodic inversion, and the tritone inverts itself because it's half an octave exactly, 6 and 6, 12. The Locrian mode also has the double music, but in this case very dissonant sounding. It's a diminished fifth. So I'll play E Locrian now. Play it again. Do it right. Very dissonant, and the tritone, the double music is right there in the middle of all that dissonance. Now let's talk about dissonance of the tritone in harmonic terms, and that would be notes of a chord. Dissonance would be in harmonic in this case. gains a place in consonants, though, since it's a dominant seventh chord, has a tritone in it. The major third and the minor seventh of a dominant chord, I'll make a tritone. It's fairly acceptable for the ear, but it's still dissonant. Chromatic. That's boogie. And because of that symmetry though of that note in a dominant chord, you can substitute a dominant chord with another chord that's a tritone away, because they both have the same tritone in their harmonies. So it's called a flat 5 substitution. So for A dominant seventh, you substitute for E flat dominant seventh, because even though A and E flat are dissonant root relationships, they both have the same tritone in them. So you can substitute any dominant chord can be substituted for another dominant chord a tritone away. The tritone with the root, the tritone away from the root of the original chord. That leaves a lot of interchange. You can play 2-5-1 would normally be. You can make it a 2 flat 2-1, because this can be substituted for this. So you can play. You can play. It's interesting. And you can play where you can play dominant chords in fifths. You can also play them in chromatics, because that would be every other dominant chord being substituted for the tritone away from it would turn a perfect fifth progression into a chromatic progression, because it's, if you go 1 and then up a 4 and down a 5 and change that 4 into the tritone away, it's just 1 chromatic. So this can become so simple, or this can become. So that's why in jazz and blues, where there's a lot of dominant chords going, a lot of it is chromatic, because you can think of that as perfect fifth progression, but with tritone substitution. So it's a lot. You can just kind of get away with sliding around and being slippery without doing a whole lot of movement around, which is kind of cool on the ergodynamics, which means work conservation or whatever, of the progression. Because if you want to be conservative or grammatically, which means very little work, you can slide up and down rather than go in for fourths and fifths, which is a little bit more work on technically with your hand movement. So I can just go, rather than, you know, they both sound good, and it's good to know both. I don't want everyone just sliding around all the time, but it's something you can throw in there. I can do that better. As opposed to, or better, try that again. Instead of that, you can just go, you know, or maybe it would be, it might be, rather, you know, you get the point. So, I hope you do. Harmonically dissonant interval also. Now, here's an interesting thing as well. And let me throw a Hendrix trick in there with that. Hendrix did a lot of dissonance on his, he actually precursed tapping to me because he wouldn't really tap, but he did a lot of... And that, all you gotta do is put another hand in and you've got tapping, but he didn't really technically do that, so Eddie got the credit, but still Jimmy was getting there. And the dissonance he likes to do is, first of all, it's all more than 1 octave intervals, which tends to help dissonance, but he doesn't, minor ninth interval, which is it's an octave plus a half step, which is 13 half steps, so 13th fret to open string, very dissonant. And you do the 18th fret to open string, which is actually an octave plus of tritone. And then I like to add, and maybe even Hendrix did, but if he didn't, I'm adding that, a minor 7th plus an octave. So 13th fret, 18th fret, 22nd fret. And in the Bible, it's funny because there's some Revelation verses that I kind of use to think of that too. The 666 verse is Revelation 13:18, and 13 is this, 18 is this, and then where it says God is Alpha and Omega, it's Revelation 22:13, which is, if you take all those 3 notes together, we'll get into this soon, you get a major triad that's actually a tritone plus an octave away from the root, the open string. So you're basically playing a chord that it has a root, a tritone away from the note that is the key note, and that becomes similar to saying that the intervals of the chord progression being a tritone is the dissonance, and that's the third way I talked about the dissonance of the tritone. First was the melodic, then harmonic, then the root movement of chords. Let's do that. Now, ironically, even though I said you can substitute chords a tritone apart, and that's still a cool thing that leads to pleasant sounds, if you actually make chord progressions a tritone apart, that's very dissonant. And you think, so let's try some of that. I'm going to play maybe E major, and then to B flat major. Watch this. D flat, G, A, E flat, F, B, very dissonant sounding progression. And what I said about the Hendrix thing is you take those 3 notes of 13, 18, 22, it makes, in G, on the G string, it makes a C sharp major triad. And C sharp, G sharp is a tritone away from G, so it implies, if you make a major triad on the G, it implies like a G major, C sharp progression, or chord-wise. Very dissonant. So open G could be G major. The 13th, 18th, and 22nd would be wait, let's get that right. Would be C sharp major, and so G major, C sharp major, very dissonant. Now you can do it as chords or arpeggios. It's arpeggios with roots away by tritones or dissonance. Let's try that. So, very dissonant stuff. It's the most dissonant interval all the way around. Melodically, harmonically, and as a root progression of chord root or arpeggio roots. Even though that can be used to effect too on a Dawkins song. I think it's Unchain the Night. I don't know. It's one of his songs that Dawkins does. Well, he does tritone, major triads and progressive tritones. I'll play it and see if this title comes to me. I can hear it, but I can't think what the name of the song is. Never Unchain the Night? Could that be it? Unchain the Night? That could be the best guess, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Sorry. But you know. Singing the night. I don't know. It sounds like it might be it. So there's my dose of oh, and then if you have like the Antichrist number 666, that would suggest 3 tritones. How about if we try to throw that in there? What would you do if you wanted to play 3 tritones in a single thing? Well, how about a blues progression? LOL. Isn't the blues the devil's music? The blues is 3 dominant chords, 1, 4, and 5. So a dominant chord on the tonic, a dominant chord on the subdominant, and a dominant chord on the fifth, which is to say this dominant chord on the root. I mean, dominant chord on the tonic, dominant chord on the subdominant, and subdominant chord on the dominant. If you take those 3 chords, which are all 7th chords, you have in B you would have E7, E7, F sharp 7, E7. But what's that? What are the tritones saying there? You have this. You have 3 tritones in a row. So 6, 6, 6. Blues music, the devil. I don't know. Living Color has a funny song called Elvis is Dead. Well, they actually play that chromatically because of tritone substitutions. You can take the 4 and the 5 and convert it into the flat 2 and the major 7 root because of the tritone substitution. So instead of going, you can go. And they have or you could also say that do it where the root of the tonic is a tritone away and the 4th and the 5th stay the same, and that would be instead of so either move the root, either move the tonic up a tritone or down a tritone to make it chromatic with the 4 and the 5 set, or move the 4 and the 5's chromatic tritone away to make it chromatic around the tonic note. But either way, the Elvis is Dead kind of goes, I'm just going to play it in whatever key I can think of. Yeah, I think that's Elvis is Dead. I'm thinking now. It might not be Elvis is Dead. Let me think. It's one of their songs. It's off of Time's Up. I know that, and it may not be Elvis is Dead, but it's on the second Living Color album. I don't. I can hear it, but I can't quite think of which song it is. Okay, but anyway. So yeah, I'm gonna finish with. Okay, okay, so I did the 666 thing. Okay, fine. There could be other ways of adding 3 tritones into besides blues. I didn't mean to pick on blues specifically for that. Anytime you have 3 dominant chords, either in chromatic succession or perfect fifth progression, you have 3 tritones, each of which are 6 half steps in a row, which makes 606 if you want to think of it that way. That doesn't have to be blues. It could be jazz. It could even be whatever thing you like to call that kind of music. Just categories or labels, whatever. Now I'm just going to play my own thing. I'm going to play a lot of tritones and see what I can show. And see if you like it, and if you get some tritones in there, that's cool. And always, I'll close the video with that. Love you guys. Peace, rock and roll.